that in the future. All this booze has hit all of us.
Where is your balloon mix?
That's right.
And the jigger. I had the jigger. There's more jiggers. Jigga.
10 zombie mix.
What's your spec for the zombie? What's your spec for the zombie mix? What am I
That's
adding?
half.
That's something half? Is that math correctly?
Yes, it does. Also, there are 2 beer remaining. In the words of all pirates, we drink it, we drink it, we drink it, we drink it.
It's 2 3/4.
Close enough. Trust me, if you put any more of 10 zombie mix in a drink, it's just going to taste more like cinnamon. Knock thyself out, said the Lord.
It's actually 2.5. But the point stands. My.
Jigger? It is over here.
Sure. Mine was Deadhead. Perkins Sweeney and finishing off the Trailers. Oh, I'm still so hot.
I mean, I can't take my sweater off. I'm hot!
This is what happens when you cook things. It's already 20 freaking degrees out.
Still trying to find an exact, ever-evolving setup for the bar and how we like it.
Just want to show off our Jamie?
I do, because I was rearranging the
Lower.
the whiskeys and the scotches and things. I said, well, they should be next to the Jamies. But you can't put the Jamies anywhere but the bottom shelf corners. And I
It's
thought,
big.
you know what would be great? A great addition to the top of the bar. Showing off how much fucking Jamesons we have. Actually does look like a good bar setup in the HUD right now.
Yeah, she just solved the other corner.
Yeah, it's a mix of visually pleasing from both sides and practical. And practically, we never use those garnishes.
Because the garnishes are for company. We don't have company.
Indeed. And they're only for the first drink that company has. First drink I make for someone, you get an excellent garnish. After that, you're nearly on your own.
The most cumbersome part of the deadhead is the strings coming down from the face because they get stuck under everything. They get caught on all the things. But it's so cool.
We'll hear that ice is going.
It's not cold though.
You are correct. It's not as chilled as it could be then. If I had to argue about it, which I don't,
But we're going to.
I would say that the liquid itself may be perfectly cold without without absorbing the heat of the tin. I wish I had the physics vocabulary to explain what I'm saying. Because the tin feels cold when it's stolen the heat from the liquid. The liquid feels cold when it's stolen the heat from the ice.
The heat leaves.
And eventually, the heat will leave the tin into the air.
It's really good, it's just the wrong way.
What I'm hearing is it's really good.
Bearing the trust.
Look at my drink. Look at it. Okay.
Didn't need that long, it's fine.
This is our only opaque tiki mug. Interesting. Darker in flavor than last time. It feels a little more mysterious. I think it might feel like a zombie should feel.
The only way we'll ever know is to 1, get falernum that isn't made by me, or 2, go have a professional zombie.
Yeah, well, if we can get to Smuggler's Cove and or Trader Vic's in our
Trader
honeymoon,
Sam's. It's the Disney one.
if they make a good zombie, in our honeymoon travels around the world going to tiki bars.
That's gonna be your honeymoon?
Can't imagine what else would be.
That's true.
Alright, I'll use one of those until then now, regardless. Shouldn't zombies also be full of crushed ice or something? So, my 10 zombie mix is now technically 8 zombie mix.
I'm okay with
Mm. Me too. I don't know that flavor-wise they're huge. Yours is. Yours is a huge improvement over your first one. Mine to me feels the same. But there's so much perceptional stuff in there. Perceptional is not a word, I don't think.
Serves your purpose.
Yes. As language should. Dictionary isn't the gatekeeper of language. It should be there to inform the uninformed, enlighten the unenlightened, embiggen the ensmalled.
I'm trying to think of the word from the Simpsons. It's not in the dictionary. One second. Let's see. I'll think it's Krampus.
Cromulent.
Cromulent.
There's so much, even the actual video that you're talking about, there's debate about which is in there and which isn't. And it's talked about on a Simpsons DVD where there's discussion about which sounds like a real word, because they both kind of do. Yeah, to say a noble spirit embiggens the smallest man And then to have someone else say, I never heard the word embiggens before I moved to Springfield. And have someone else say, I don't know why, it's a perfectly cromulent word. Contextually, if one were real, there wouldn't be a clue as to which one wasn't in that. I guess cromulent, in the structure of a joke, it's more clear that cromulent is a made-up word. Because, I apologize for being a huge dick. Okay, I will talk about cromulence.
I will watch this video later to hear about it.
Then the video will have a view!
Woo!
So in the structure of a joke, when Lisa's teacher says, I don't know why, it's a perfectly cromulent word, that hints at the fact that in Springfield they make up words, that one made-up word is explained by another made-up word. However, as so many things in The Simpsons have bled over into real life, people started using both of those words, not just in the context of joking, but as if they were real, and so one of them has made their way into the dictionary, therefore ruining the joke itself, meaning that future generations won't understand what the humor is in that sequence. And as I was saying, embiggens is clear, especially via context, what it means. A noble spirit embiggens the smallest man. Cromulent can only be used to justify something else, so I don't think cromulent will actually come into usage. But anyone would understand what you meant if you said, yes, I was embiggened by that, or I will embiggen this moment. Only Simpsons fans at this point would understand if something happened and you were to say that was perfectly cromulent, and there would be a mix of irony and sarcasm and perhaps legitimate usage. Because Liv is still peeing, I'll go on. If something happened that made no sense, and you said, that was perfectly cromulent, that would work. And then if something happened that made sense and was quite efficient, and you said, that was perfectly cromulent, that would also work. The word cromulent, treating it as a word, hasn't yet nailed down what it means sincerely, or what it means ironically, because it was birthed ironically. What a time to be alive. The other joke on The Simpsons that they talk about in the DVD commentaries that is sort of lost to time, where current generations don't get it because the world has changed around it, is in You Only Move Twice. They talk about how when Bart goes to his new school, on the billboard outside there's a website address, and everyone thinks like, oh, that must be like a funny website address, or a website address of a funny thing, or blah blah. The joke is that the school has a website, because it was like 93 and schools didn't have websites. Now every school of course does have a website, and it's totally normal. It would be freakish and weird and the subject of a Vice doc if a school didn't even have access to a website. So no, like there's no joke, there's no layer to that joke. It's just they were joking that the school is so futuristic, it has a website, and now we live in the future, and all schools have websites. That doesn't mean The Simpsons predicted it, because we're all tired of the notion that The Simpsons predicted everything. Because they put out 1,000 episodes and made 25,000 jokes that were written by very smart people. And yeah, they didn't make predictions, they made jokes. And sometimes jokes echo later in life. Boy, I've been feeling for time for a minute here. Now I have to pee. I wrecked my first shaker by shaking a drink, leaving the top on and putting it down. When I came back the next day, it had rusted on the inside. So now I'm careful about that. I always want to clean a shaker, even if I'm not wanting to clean anything else in my life. I'm just drunk and babbling to a camera. See, Lloyd never took money from his family. I thought that was amazing. That was a reference to the ref. I can't do
Drunk voice.
the voiced squeak that Judy does.
Watch the ref.
Watch the ref come Christmas time.
Cole's gonna ask you if you think you can have the death of the author without killing the environment in which the art was created. Mostly when it comes to your mention of the Twinkle on the Trees website.
I think the direct answer to your question is no, you cannot have death of the author. But I don't think anyone aspires to have death of the author anymore. I think everyone is obsessive about authoric intent and authoric character.
Well, not even... Regardless of the stance on if the author is dead, if you did have a scenario where you completely disregarded authoric intent, would you still be able to consider the era in which anything was created?
No, you wouldn't. If you disregarded authorship, you wouldn't have any reference for understanding historical context, which I think is extremely important. Like, the importance of Huck Finn is that it was written during slavery, and it's essentially an anti-slavery book. That matters. If it was written now, it would seem so horribly antiquated and shitty, and a little bit tolerant of slavery, like slavery was a maybe. So you do need to know not just when, well, you do need to know when. If you're going to try and get rid of authorship in criticism, knowing when would still matter, but I think knowing by whom still matters as well. And there are two sides to this knife that are fucking brutal. Because on Twitter, every couple of weeks, someone will say that, like, John Green must be a pedophile because most of his protagonists are teenage girls, or the way he writes his teenage girl protagonist or characters. And I think,
as opposed to him just being a young adult author.
Yeah. And I think that's nonsense. I think people who are desperate for the identity politics of authorship, who want to read, who are looking for villainy in all things, they abuse what authorship in criticism is supposed to be worth. Because your criticism of a novel shouldn't be, I think white men shouldn't write black characters. And then attack everything that happens in that novel through the lens of race, of white on black race viewership. Because then you're not actually getting anything out of the novel. You're psychoanalyzing the author, and that's not the point. You are supposed to get something out of reading, not just a psychological assessment of the author. At the same time, yes, I think time matters, and I think authorship matters. My big thing, sorry for cutting you off, because you were about to say something. Yeah. I still think a lot about the book The Gatsby Affair, which talks about what Fitzgerald and Zelda were going through when F. Scott wrote The Great Gatsby, and how his marriage fed into that novel. That changed and enhanced what I saw in a book that I already loved. I already had a firmly established multiple read opinion of The Great Gatsby, and knowing what he was going through in his personal life and knowing more about him as a person gave me a new layer and a new read in a novel that I already loved. I think that's absolutely valuable. I don't think books should be anonymous. That would be the absolute interpretation of the discussion of death of the author. Like, should all books be anonymous? Because some books would benefit from that for some readers. Like
the one attempt that J.K. Rowling made at writing a mystery novel under a pen name.
Her name was outed.
No, it's-
Because there's two things at work with authorship. One is brand, and one is character. And they both get abused in various ways. Like, J.K. Rowling writing some outside of Harry Potter novel anonymously meant that she wanted to do it outside of her character. She didn't want people looking for Harry Potterism in that other novel. So that was a good reason to do it anonymously. And then the perfect opposite of that is like Jack Reacher novels, which are kind of like the old classic paintings where their apprentice did most of the actual work, and then the master came in and just painted the eyes, or just like a couple of touch-ups. Like, there was a factory system for Renaissance painting.
And then the master put their name on it, and everyone's like, oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah, and like any Harlequin romance novel or any spy novel for middle-aged dads riding planes, those are all churned out factory system style. Authorship doesn't matter at that point. Authorship is a brand endorsement type thing. But you're not going to gain anything in the reading by having it be a Stephen King novel, because I can't remember any other. Lee Child wrote the Reacher novels.
You can go check.
I'm gonna go pee.
And then you can go check. And then I will just make my point that we'll switch places again. Because my point would be that the death of the author should not be death of context, but it does. This is mostly due to the change in what the author means in terms of what they write. If you look at Stephen King or Tolkien, they have a more expectation of genre than expectation of writing. If you look at it, and if you look at the Dark Tower series, they have differences, they have similarities. He likes to bring up daring and just everything. But Tolkien, you're just expecting fantasy. In-depth fantasy. So if you wanted to have the Death of the Writer's Day, at that point, it was the context and everything associated with the writer didn't matter. Today, the death of the writer has more personality cult that's an issue. So yeah, K.K. Rowling, you expect happy teen things about wizards doing stuff. Good versus evil, simplistic, black and gray, black and white story. However, that author can also just show up and tell you things about the universe that didn't matter or need to be. So we took that with the idea that it came out early 2000s, certain things were certain things, terrorism was whatever, and you still have context. But you don't need J.K. telling you that, Hermione likes lemon-scented toilet paper. Our cats are really cute.
I heard a little bit about how you talked about fandom.
Mostly that I don't think at this point in the theory of the death of the author, that the death of the author means the same thing anymore. Where when it was originally thought of, the death of the author really meant death in context.
Yeah,
Everything associated with it.
Yeah, it was closer to being books should be anonymous and.
I accidentally pushed it down so it leaked into the base.
And also, you get no flavor notes when you drink out of that. You smell stainless steel, and then you take a shot. And maybe it's gun steel.
No, it would be closer to a brushed metal if it was a gun. Anyway, but I was saying that in the context of today's authors, where it's more personality cult and fandom, then you can still remove the author without removing context. You can say it was written at 93, so the joke is the fact that they don't have websites, whereas today's authorial intent would be go to this website and see the funny joke I made.
I don't agree with that.
Okay. Trying to figure out how to drink this while I have a bunch of liquid in the bottom.
Shotgun style.
Don't shotgun whiskey, kids!
Yeah, actually don't. So to try and engage with that point, before we talk about fandom.
Also, this video is now just a disaster.
I like it, because it's the making of some drinks and then a conversation. If I have to cut out a bunch of stuff to get it down to a reasonable length, but there are podcasts on YouTube.
Bars?
Yes.
Okay. Checking the power.
This could be a worthwhile equivalent of a podcast, as long as there aren't long silences or long repetitive rambling sections.
There's gonna be long repetitive rambling sections.
So on the topic of
Death of the author in context.
we need to stop saying death of the author, because we're talking about anonymity or not. Death of the author is a trope for anonymity and the meaninglessness of authorship, and that authoric intent means nothing. Which, regardless, is false. Even a book written anonymously would still have authoric intent.
See, my issue with authoric intent is Wagner.
And the Flood of the Valkyries.
And the Nazis. I like the Flood of the Valkyries.
Who were just misunderstood. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my god, no!
No,
Cut that!
no.
Cutting that!
You were saying?
No. Just no. The Nazis took the two zombies. The Nazis took the intent of Wagner as anti-Semitic, which in his as an anti-Semite. Wagner being anti-Semite. Which in his life, I don't know enough about Wagner's personal life to say yes or no, but in his works, there's no, I'm thinking of specifically the Ring series, there is no obviously Jewish stereotype character that everyone needs to fight against. There's no dwarves. There's no Ferengi. It was taken by the Nazis that they had this great musician that had some anti-Semitic leanings, that they could take all of his works and put it towards their goals. You know what? I don't know how violins can be anti-Semitic, but if you want to fight me on that, comment section.
So here's an interesting idea on that. When the inverse, when authoric intent is extremely political, Ayn Rand.
You just want to go for the hardcore Minecraft.
Ayn Rand, she specifically stated that all her fictional writings were to support her political, her socio-political, economic beliefs.
I just want to
Should
confirm.
they be read without that context? Because then you have a generation of douchebags.
I just want to confirm because I got these. We have I just want to confirm because I got them mixed up a lot. Vampires?
You're thinking of Anne Rice.
Thank you. Too many Anns.
Yeah, different spelling as well. That was a hilarious moment in this visual podcast.
We're not animating this. If you want that, go watch Midnight Gospel. It's awesome.
God, if this were animated, it'd be amazing. And we should wrap this up because we are down to one bar, and this video is probably reaching an hour. Authoric intent can be, well, is always present. You can't actually get away from it. To read a book and try and negate authoric intent is to misread the book. Like, if you really wanted to, actually, I can go for a humorous example. If you want to watch Jaws and have it be about capitalism, it can be. You can jump through those hoops and make those metaphors work.
Those are some
The authoric intent.
very obvious hoops, though.
The authoric intent is that it's a movie about a shark. It's meant to be a scary, suspenseful movie. That's all it is. There is no layers of authoric intent. You can watch it to be a critique on society in many, many ways, but that's what you're bringing to it, and you're layering on top of what's there. And I actually think that authoric intent can be used to prevent the perversion of story. Because you can make any story about anything. You can make anyone the protagonist, you can make anyone the antagonist. You have to respect what the author was trying to say when they said it.
I'm gonna go ahead and say whatever makes for the more interesting conversation on the piece. I'll take your Jaws example. If you just want to talk about a movie about vilifying sharks, sure, we can talk about vilifying sharks. But if you want to talk about the capitalist aspects of it, be a slightly longer conversation, whether or not that was the author's intent. If the author writes something like Ayn Rand, and you just want to talk about it because there's so much to parse there, then it's a more interesting conversation. But yeah, at some level you become a douchebag, so...
Agree and continuation. There's a separation to be acknowledged between what you think is actually in a novel and what is fun to discuss. And in our societal criticism, we're kind of crossing that line or blurring that line a lot. Because this is what Ben and I had in our discussion about Rush.
You were going to say photosynthesis.
There are things that are true, that are worth discussing, and then there are things that are interesting to discuss, and you still have to separate them.
Fun fact for the audience, this is why Ben thinks Alistair hates Rush. It's still to be determined whether or not he likes Rush.
Story time. 1 bar left on the camera. I, with no memory of this, while drinking, I stood on the mountain and argued that Rush was the worst band in the world.
That's such an inaccurate claim, but anyway.
Like, the fact that he brought it up, like, jokingly, like, oh yeah, well, like, you know, you wouldn't feel this way. I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, it's Rush. I was like, I don't know what you mean. He's like, you hate Rush. Like, you hate Rush. I was like, I have nothing against Rush. Whatever the conversation was, I had really dialed in on, like, they're an example of everything that can be wrong and ever be wrong with music. I just hate Rush so much. And I do that in conversations where I see a point of view worth taking that's, I think, not objectively accurate, but worth discussing. And then I drill down on that for all its philosophical worth. And I forget to touch base and be like, by the way, I don't actually think this, but someone who thought this might argue this. Like, everything becomes a thought experiment because we all know what reality is, and reality is quite boring.
That Rush is actually just a mediocre band with 40-minute songs.
Yeah. And in the continuum of Canadian bands, which is a conversation Ben and I had that I really enjoyed, I don't think Rush should be counted deeply as a Canadian band, because there's nothing Canadian about them. That's going to throw off this whole podcast.
I just want to know what your opinions on Billy Talent are. And wait.
And their authoric intent.
Is Cancer Beats from Toronto?
Yes, they are.
Also Canadian. Fuck yeah.
There are a lot of great... I actually really loved that Ben and I's conversation about what makes a Canadian band is coming up again. Because, as everyone has pointed out, Canada isn't a genre. Like, there are Canadian bands in all genres.
Dare you to listen to throat singing and then Great Big Sea and tell me they're the same thing.
What Ben and I were talking about that is always worth talking about, that we're all secretly talking about, is... pour me a shot of something.
Have some more of that. Whiskey.
Which whiskey? Bold and flavorful.
Yeah!
And,
yeah!
you pour it all over yourself if it gets into the...
Yeah!
This is the worst video podcast ever at this point.
Disagree.
I'm sure there are so many worse.
We're not talking about genocide. It's fine.
Yeah.
Which I mean, enacting is genocide. I do not care if you discuss genocide as a philosophical thing.
Well, you got to listen to on one of the most recent Behind the Bastard podcasts.
Ooh, who did I talk about?
They talk about the Bleach Church and the movement in the U.S. for drinking, douching, atomizing, and I don't think yet injecting bleach. Like, there are a lot of like huckster churches that
It's so bad. Don't do that.
they've legally considered bleach their sacrament so that they can't be criticized for doing what they do with it. And it gets dark. Like,
that is fucked up.
yeah, like they are atomizing autistic children with bleach. And there are people in these churches who know what's up, and they're just hucksters. They're just grifters.
See, the immediate connection I make between that is the podcast we listen to on abortion arguments, where they just talk about the history of Lysol.
Yep.
Many moons ago, Lysol apparently was used as a very effective abortion technique and advertised as such.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying. So if you have a church where they're just shoving people full of bleach, I assume it's also because they're claiming you to be the bearer of Satan's child.
Yeah, it's...
But God forbid your doctor do that.
Yeah, that's what they talk about. And that's where this all comes from, is that the medical system, especially in the US where it costs everything, is so cold and daunting and unfamiliar and unhelpful, and then just robs you of everything you have financially. Of course you would latch on to any other thing. That's the dual problem. It's not just like some people distrust science and trust faith hucksters. It's that they don't really have a choice. It's either engage with this brutal medical system that is, I don't want to say as much a con, but is extremely dark and very con-ish. Where even a doctor who has your best interests at heart will send you for tests you don't need because they cost thousands of dollars, and prescribe you things that will be useless because they cost thousands of dollars. If you took the money out of the equation, like with everything, you'd have a good system. If there were no profit to be generated, but only good to be done, you would have a good medical system.
I'm fairly certain you'd also lose most of your doctors. But
I think most is the wrong word.
a portion.
But I think you'd lose bad doctors anyways. Now we're getting into, like, what does it mean to be a communist versus a capitalist?
And we should wrap this up, as we said like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, 100%.
So, we made zombies, we talked about stuff. If you want to hear us talk about capitalist versus communist healthcare systems, leave a like, subscribe, comment, follow us on Patreon, Twitter, say whatever our cam girl site is.
OnlyFans, mini-vids, my
Pornhub.
free cams, Pornhub, Model Hub.
The free cam is 100% just us doing the hula, just by the way.
Yeah.
And you do the catchphrase this time.
And there is a tumbler for
Oh yeah, you have a tumbler.
never
I
once
also have a
used.
tumbler. I want to say White Rabbit Watcher because I used to think I was cool.
Bet that name is a cool name.
Oh, thank you.